Alright, so obviously this is why I disagree with the split timeline that most Zelda fans believe in, which they almost fanatically believe in, I'd have to say, just because they want everything to work out the exact way they think it should through the timeline. Even though there's so many problems, I probably couldn't list them all. However, I'm going to give it a shot and read off this little thing I wrote about the various problems I found with it. Also, just for starters, sometimes I click during this audio because I'm pausing it to like catch my breath or whatever the hell else I might be doing, so just ignore that. Anyway, first things first, at the end of Ocarina of Time, we see a little scene where Link has just put the Master Sword back into the pedestal, the light fades around him and shit like it normally did, and then him being a child as a result, just as the way he was any other time he put the sword back. We also see that the Door of Time is open, which will become extremely important later in this little discussion here. For the time being, though, it shows us that he was sent back no further than any other time that he put the sword back, because the door would not be open otherwise. Now, the Wind Waker itself definitely implies that he was not sent back in time by Zelda herself, if the scene at the end of the game wasn't enough, because in the legend at the beginning of the Wind Waker, it depicts Link riding off or whatever as an adult with Epona, or Epona, however you want to pronounce that, after defeating Ganondorf. While some say that this legend may have been altered over time, this is very likely the original version that was written in Ancient Hylian, which is what it shows on the little script, which is the language that was used at the time that the Hero of Time lived. The legend also said that it had basically faded to the winds by the time the Wind Waker happened, implying that this was more or less the old and true version. How is it that Link was able to ride off from whatever town it was after defeating Ganondorf if Zelda simply erased him from existence? And when Ganondorf broke free, Link would have been gone anyway because he had put the sword back sometime after the end of the game and taken off to Termina. Anyway, just to get this out of the way early on, people kept bringing up that Zelda said that Link needs to go back and put the sword back so that he can then live life as a normal child like he should have been, which for whatever reason they claim means that she would have sent him back herself rather than him putting the sword back. This doesn't make any bloody sense, because he would retain his memories either way, making him no more able to live life as a normal child than he would be if he had put the sword back himself, which the game heavily implies that he did. Now I just want to bring up how Ganondorf would work in both theories. In the split one, Ganondorf would be sealed in the future, but be free to roam and destroy the world in the past, which he proved himself quite capable of doing considering what he did to Castletown, which really doesn't make any sense to allow him to do, now does it? My idea for how he stays sealed is actually quite simple. Every time you finish a temple and obtain a medallion, you are then able to travel to the past and back, yet the temple stays empty of all its evils in the future, when you return to it anyway. And it does this despite the fact that the sword obviously sends you back to the same points in time each time you draw and return the sword, no further than what you did the last time. I propose that the sword, power of the sages, or whatever else might come into play here actually mends the timeline, which would eliminate the evils of the temples through to the past, thus eliminating the need to do it in the future, therefore keeping them clean of all the evil and you in possession of the sage's power. The sealing of Ganondorf is also done by the sages, and you return the sword afterward anyway, so is it unreasonable to assume that the same rules would apply? Ganondorf would therefore be sealed in the past as well, which makes a hell of a lot more sense than to allow him to just run rampant in the child timeline while Link goes gallivanting off to Termina. Yet another point I can bring up is about the Ocarina of Time itself, and yeah, this might get a tad bit confusing. If Zelda sent you back to when you were a child in the Temple of Time, then the Ocarina of Time would have to cease to exist in the child timeline. See, this is because the Door of Time was open as we saw, and if this is the case, then Zelda would have already relinquished the Ocarina of Time to Link at that point in the past, or present, I suppose. But she took it from him in the future, meaning that it wouldn't be in his possession either. This couldn't have happened because we see Zelda giving it to him before the events of Majora's Mask. In my theory, however, it is able to be in Zelda's possession in the past as well as the future. See, when you put the sword back, you retained all of your possessions from the future, such as the ones you found in temples. Therefore, if you put the sword back yourself and Ganondorf was sealed as I suggested, then Zelda would have the Ocarina of Time in her possession as it has to be due to the mending or whatever you want to call it. Also, in this non-split idea, if Link had simply put the sword back himself, as the game showed he probably did, then Ganondorf would eventually break free and cause the events of the Wind Waker, causing no issue there. Link would be gone because he would have taken off to Termina after putting the sword back, likely due to the fact that he was basically an adult in a child's body. And along with that, the King of Red Lions, who was the King of Hyrule at the time that Link was being the Hero of Time, I suppose, he says that Link left Hyrule, or the land, and that's what made him lose the Triforce. If the timeline was split, it kind of begs the question of where the hell Link went in the future after beating Ganondorf. Also, wouldn't the King of Red Lions have been, like, dead or something? Because we can probably assume that he was not alive during the adult timeline since Zelda had taken off and Ganondorf kinda took over the castle. You wouldn't think that he'd let the King of Hyrule live, would you? Anyway, I apologize for the kinda shoddy audio here because I had to keep clicking pause due to collecting my thoughts. And if any of you want to point out any issues with this theory, go for it because it might jog my memory on things that I forgot to mention during this.